Everybody, it's Jacob with the Shot Clock Podcast. I'm back. Yeah, it's been a while. Look, life got in the way. Season started, teams to coach, academies to help run. And this last weekend, I had the absolute honour and privilege to be part of the Dublin Basketball Classic, brought to you by Inspire Sports. Gareth McGuire, Deirdre Brennan, Mark Mulholland, and the rest of their crew up at Sports Changes Life, doing an amazing job. Some podcasts surrounding that weekend coming soon. Very exciting times ahead. But look, I'm back. I'm hoping to record some more episodes this week and start pumping out one episode a week from now on. It will be released on a Friday morning at 8 a.m. All going to plan. Look, let's see how it goes. Our first episode back of season 2, which is episode 5, is a coaching podcast. Not X's and O's. I feel there's enough of them out there, and I'm not that knowledgeable, if I'm being honest, to go into the tech of everything. So this is just a chance to get to know some of the coaches within our community. So our first episode back is with current Irish under-18 men's coach. Without further ado, it's Paul Kelleher. Hey everybody, it's Jacob with the Shot Clock Podcast. Finally back after a little hiatus. I'm back with a coaches edition. This is going to be a new edition of the podcast. And who better to sit down with than the current under-18 men's national coach, under-15 Neptune coach, and somebody who I reach out to regularly to try and regulate my emotions while coaching. I don't know whether it works or not. Two volatile people talking, how to calm each other down. Whether it works, who knows? Paul Kelleher, delighted to finally get you on the podcast.
Thanks for being here. It's going to be fun, I think.
Yeah, should be. So, I saw you up in the arena, obviously, over the weekend at the NCAA. You were coming off practice with the 18s. How did that go, first and foremost?
Yeah, really great weekend. Good group. Smart. So yeah, we're excited by it. We're excited about this group. We always are. We always say that, but yeah, there's just something different about this group. And in one respect, it's like got nothing to do with us. I suppose it's got everything to do with the coaching they've got at their levels with their clubs, and I suppose the progression that we are making as coaches in the country, as well. So I think that's not necessarily a me or Irish program thing this early. I think it's more to do with, as I said, the coaching that they're getting at their club level and what they're doing. That it's like I think we're a little bit ahead of where we normally are. And that's just down to their own ability and stuff like that. So that's compliments to the Irish basketball community more than me, to be perfectly honest.
That's a very honest answer. Fair play to you. A lot of coaches would have sat back and gone, "It's all on me. I've done a great job in a couple of weeks." But to reach out and thank programs, and look, we all know that without our backbone and without the programs that the kids come from, your job would be virtually impossible. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it is fantastic. And as you said, look, I think we're getting better as a coaching community of helping each other and reaching out more. I know during lockdown and post-lockdown, you've been on, it seems like every time I turn on an X's and O's podcast, your voice seems to just be resonating. It's coming out of everyone. So what have you done? Slapping Glass, coaching culture. You've been on a lot of them. What made you make that transition to, being able to take what you've done here to get onto that international stage? Is it connections you've made? Or from my point of view, I think it's just the work that you're doing. I
think I've always been lucky that people have, introduced me or to people that are in the know and stuff like that. And I think the first time was like when I was coached up in Kilkenny and came back off European Championships, and Pat Price was like, "Get your rear end up here," and Bob McKillop was up here, and I was like, "Pat, I'm jaded after coming off the Europeans," and he said, "Get your rear end up here." So I went up, and so I was just coaching the station. I actually didn't even know what Bob McKillop looked like at the time, and I seen this grey-haired old man looking over the thing. I'm a bit tick stupid at the time, so I didn't even realize it was possibly him that was looking at the station. So I'm giving it socks and just doing my thing or whatever it was, and next thing come up afterwards, and it's, "Hi, my name is Bob McKillop," and by the end of the week it was like, "Do you want to come work our camp next year?" And ever since then. I just went over to Davidson for about 15 years. I haven't been there now since my daughter was born, in about 5 years. But yeah, so that's kind of how we got. And I think with the whole podcast thing, again, I got lucky. I did some silly thing at the start of COVID. I put like together like 4 transition scores that we had for the Irish team and stuck it up, and there's some silly tweet of like, how many times can you how many transitions can your team get in the 20 seconds it takes to wash your hands for COVID? Something stupid like that. So yeah, so it was like, so next thing I get a message from this guy over in Texas, Race and Pace podcast, and started with that. And then within that time, I kind of got reached out to by Listen and did a few online things out there, and then set up our own one. And yeah, just kind of
it was the fusion one that you did over here.
Yeah. So some pretty good guests on that as well, and I thought that kind of went down a treat. It was kind of overload the first few weeks, and then they kind of realized, now people are kind of, only want one a week, so we kind of tapered off to one a week. But the initial part of it was heavy going. I think it was a 2, maybe 3
2 a night you had.
Yeah, 2 a night, and I think 2 nights a week. So
yeah,
it was fairly heavy. But I think at the start, people were doing it, and like we had over 100 people on each night, which was unbelievable. And so it just kind of went from there, and then a couple more after that, and a couple more after that, and I think I've been very lucky, to be perfectly honest. It's nothing to do with anything ability wise or whatever it is. You ask a question in private, and next thing all of a sudden you're being asked to do something else, and I'm very simplistic. I don't do anything exceptional. I always tell them, I said, like, you can get better guests than me. I'm just not, and they can. I mean, look, I'm a very bland guy. I've been on some calls with guys, and I'm just like, holy shit, I'm out of my depth here, massively out of my depth here. But you just learn and you just take stuff on. And I think the biggest thing really is all the kind of the culture stuff, the soft skill stuff. That's the stuff that I think most of that we've taken really from COVID and brought in. I can actually see a massive difference nationally already with what we've learned from COVID. And I think we're seeing the benefit of it. Yes, our players fell behind a small bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the quick jump that they've gotten now since we've gotten back on the floor, I think it has been really good to see.
It's one of those strands where, as our players decline slightly due to lack of play, our coaches had the chance to reach out to other people and get a different, like your fusion clinics were what I started on, and it got me engaged into the coaching community again where I hadn't been. Mm-hmm. So the learning I did during COVID is now coming through my players. So it's one of them. It's, we lost a bit, but we gained and reconnected. Obviously, even with this podcast, we reconnected with just basketball people as well, which was a huge bonus, because normally in season, you have no time.
Yeah.
Whereas with the 2 years that we were forced to take off, you did have that time to actually, reach out to people that you hadn't spoken to and get back in touch, Yeah.
I mean, I think too, I took that time off, or were out of coaching for a while, came back to probably something that like, oh crap, where's this gone? This is kind of really exploded up. And I found it very difficult the first couple of months in terms of, oh shit, like, this is why I was getting this wrong for so often. This is why I was getting this wrong for so often, and I think you have to kind of experience it before you actually understand why they're doing it now. And I saw an awful lot of wrong with my coaching during COVID as opposed to anything else. And you just reach out to people and say, right, like, is this why this didn't work? Or, what's your experience of this in this situation? Do you think this would work? We tried that, but it did, or we tried that and it didn't, or we didn't get what we wanted. It worked to a certain degree, but we thought there was a better way, or whatever it is. So I think you kind of have to have that ability to analyze as to why it works or why it doesn't work, or why it might fit in the environment that you're in. And the more that I'm around this, I'm more beginning to realize, like, the environment that you're in and the environment you create determines an awful lot of what works and what doesn't work. More than the X's and O's and stuff like that. And I suppose when I started off coaching first, we all wanted to be the X and O guru. We always wanted to show the great sets, and we all wanted to do all that sort of stuff. But like, I didn't realize up on COVID that there's a hell of a lot more to coaching than just inside the 4 lines. And that was a great thing about COVID, I think, is that we found that there is more than just what's inside the 4 lines. And then obviously improving what we do inside the 4 lines, of how we practice and stuff like that. And, there's always going to be that debate of what's the best way. And people will say, small-sided games. We call it games of purpose. Constraints-led approach, block learning. What's the balance? What's the stuff like that? And I just think it's going to be, everybody will have their opinion. And then you talk about age, stage, and how, and all that sort of stuff. So it's just always going to be a debate, and I suppose you have to be comfortable how you teach it just as much as they're comfortable learning it. And I think that's a massive thing, really.
That is very true. Right, we'll take it back. We'll go back to, first of all, what got you into basketball, or who got you into basketball? And secondly, what made you make that transition from, player to coach?
Two great questions. So I suppose I'll never forget it. My dad obviously played. Our family was a basketball family. Roger Kelleher is a family member, obviously, and he was coaching an under 13 team in the North Mon at the time. And Martin Wills had a broken left hand. So Martin Wills, I used to meet Martin Wills at the corner of our estate, and we walked down by the Glen, down Spring Lane, and we'd walk up to the North Mon, the two of us, and he'd look after me. I was 7 years old, and we'd fight. My first taste of basketball was 5 days a week. We started on the Monday. I'd walk up, walk back, and Martin Wills would bring me up. And for the first 2 days, all I had to do was make 50 right-hand layups before Martin could make 100 left-hand layups, because his right hand was broken. And that was my introduction to basketball, and loved it. And at 7 years old, I was walking up and down from, as I said, a half-hour walk from our estate in Dublin Hill, all the way up to the North Mon, the outdoor courts some days, the indoor courts the next days, and fell in love with it. And that was it. Up until I was 14, and kind of started falling out of love with it, and started playing soccer. And and I stayed playing longer than I wanted, because I was afraid to let my dad know that I wanted to stop playing basketball. And so we eventually played in a tournament down in Limerick. We played in a tournament with against Paddy Kelly's Leicester with Johnny Grinnell.
Right, okay.
And we had Kevin Reddy, current Neptune chairman Martin O'Sullivan, another Martin Sullivan, Ian Murphy, myself, and then my younger brother Barry and Alan Sheedy and stuff like that. So we would evolve in every second year. And we played in the tournament below in Limerick, and we'd beaten Leicester by 24 in the pool. And we played them in the final again. And we were 23 up at half time, and we lost by 1.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we I don't think Kevin Reddy, who's back involved with Neptune, would appreciate the story, but we were 23 up at half time, and I got fouled out, the two Martins got fouled out, and Clash just made that comeback there, as they would with the Johnny Grinnell and Paddy Kelly team. And we went 1 down with like 10 seconds to go. We inbounded it, and Kevin, as he did, who was still probably one of the most powerful guards I've seen, like, he was just so explosive with the open floor. When he got inside the 3-point line, he was unstoppable at the time. And went full court, and he missed the layup on the buzzer, and we lost by 1.
Oh no.
And so I stopped playing for 2 years after that game.
Wow.
And so I didn't have a very positive experience with somebody. And when somebody said I wanted to go play soccer, I was told, yeah, you're better off. So didn't play for 2 years after that. And then my brother came into secondary school. So how I started coaching was, brother came into secondary school. We never had a male team in secondary school. So all his buddies were all on like local teams, like B teams and C teams and all that sort of stuff. And there was 11 of them came in. They all wanted to play basketball. So I went to Martina Deneen, who's the English teacher and girls basketball coach at the time above in the school, and said, will you coach the boys? She said, no, I won't. You're going to coach them. And I'll sit on the stage and do my corrections, and you can coach them. And ever since then, fell in love with it and coached ever since.
Wow. So yeah. you made the decision fairly early on in your career to go to coaching.
Yeah. I was an average player. I wasn't a great player. I mean, I was a really good shooter. That was it, really. I could just shoot the ball. Wasn't a great ball handler. Was an awful defender. And you wouldn't find me near a rebounder for love or money. But I'd stand the 3-point line and shoot the hell out of it, and that was it, really, And so I wasn't a great player. I knew that early on. But I always felt I understood how the game should be played, and thoroughly enjoyed kind of being on the floor and practicing and stuff like that. So yeah, just kind of fell in love with it, and ever since then.
So moving on from that coaching, at an early age, who would have been either mentors or people you looked up to in the coaching world, or who did you mirror yourself on? Were you slick Pat Riley kind of, or more Phil Jackson, Zen, or who was Paul Kelleher when he started coaching?
Well, I suppose Paul Kelleher and Zen probably wouldn't go hand in hand if you no.
It's like
So
Jared Jago and Zen, two of them don't go.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting one because really, like, I just thought, I just did the same stuff I always taught. You know what I mean? And I did a little bit differently. I thought there was one or two things more to it. And then my brother and Cormac Fooey were going to the States one summer. And my brother was going to the States the following summer. And my dad just said, look, any chance, just go with him, mind him, look after him. He was only 17 at the time. I was 19. I just finished school. And I said, yeah, no problem. So Roger kind of organised a couple of weeks to Poconos. And Pete Strickland was down at Coastal Carolina at the time. So we went down there for a week and stuff like that. But when I was up to Poconos, my dad was obviously trying to get me a job in Portugal. The following summer, I was getting to the working world and all that sort of stuff. But above the Poconos, I said, look, any chance to come back next year and get into coaching. Just got lucky again, just asked the question and went back the following year for 5 weeks. Went back the following year after that for 7 weeks. Went back the following year after that for 12 weeks. And then just kind of built on that and just started getting to Duke camps and Davidson camps and all that sort of stuff, and just loved it. And ever since then, just got to know our good friend Dave Hopla. So I worked a bunch of his camps, and Bob Hurley camp and Kevin Boyle camp, and you just get to know all these guys, and you just build up. And one thing that I was taught when I started coaching first, and Francis Sullivan always said to me, is that, like, you're only going to be as good as what you allow yourself to be exposed to. And back then it was very much skill development and all that sort of stuff. So at the time I was exposed to, like, Bob Hurley and all the great players he was coming in with, and he'd bring them up to camp, and Kevin Boyle and all those guys. And then you just build over the years, and as things have changed and evolved, you try to evolve with it as you understand things better. And that's kind of where it's gone, really. I suppose in terms of style of play, I hadn't really noticed anything until I got to Davidson and saw the kill-up style, and we've done that for a bunch of time. Now we've evolved away from that a little bit and kind of hybrid a small bit. But I suppose early days I was very much a stats guy, and Tom Izzo was the man. I know I probably wouldn't watch a Tom Izzo game if you paid me. So I think we've kind of evolved over time. I love watching Barcelona, I love watching Tenerife, just like different styles. But one guy I really loved coaching against over in the Euros was the Slovenian coach at the time. And he was just outstanding. Just loved how he played, the ball movement, the way the bodies moved, and the timing of which it moved. And we always had some great contests. And just, so just wonderful going against all those guys. So you pick things up the whole time. And just watching Sweden last year was just tremendous at the European Championship. So, just constantly picking things up. Can that work for us? It's wonderful, but it's not really going to work for us. What does this do? How does that work for us? And I suppose having that analytical brain is a massive part, really, in terms of how you move forward, how you regress. Things that we did defensively last year didn't work. That worked the year before. You just think seamlessly works. Transitions in, it was terrible. So we're going back a little bit to what we did in 2013. So when we came back last year, watched a bunch of stuff over the last few years and said, how come this worked? How come that didn't work? How come this worked? And just really trying to mash it and then take what that worked. Because a massive trend this past summer, the European Champs, trying to really make it work for the group that we have. And I suppose it's just constantly evolving into things like that. And that's where I am now, is just kind of, and just work what happens off the court that we would have never been taught in our sports degrees. That was never ever touched on. So it's just a constant evolving and reaching out to people. And I would have never been brave enough to have done that before COVID. So, like, I think COVID allowed people to just settle down and take questions. And ever since then, you just kind of, all they can say is no, or they don't have time, or whatever it is, So I would have never been brave enough to do that in the past.
So you said the Slovenian coach last year was an amazing coach, but who's been your toughest opponent coaching-wise, and why?
Oh, right. There's so many. I mean, and for all different reasons. It's I've had some wonderful battles with Pat Price, over the years, and just because we know each other and we know our styles and what we're doing, and it's just always been close games, and he's nipped a few and I've nipped a few and all that sort of stuff, and they've all been great battles. Love coaching against Giannis. He's just a difficult one because he just manages the tempo of the game with his players, and just really strategically different against everybody else. So that he's always been a tough coach to coach against. I've had one W against him, but he's just always been very difficult. Like, he just manages. He's technically sound. His scouting is great. And then had some great battles against Pulte. We've had some wonderful stuff. Probably the guy that coached against the longest ever since I got schools basketball. He's probably the guy, up and down the country. And then you go different styles. Kieran Sullivan, when I was at Neptune and Ballincollig, like, two very similar styles, space the floor. Obviously some nuances. Some of the stuff that he's doing with Ballincollig this year, some really nice stuff. He's evolved massively, and that was always a tough battle. Then the schools in Cork, myself in France, was always having massive battles. Like, it was always either Josh Cullen or ourselves in the AG, and some great stuff there. But the one dude that we just can't seem to break is Brian O'Malley. Just always tanked us with Leicester, and so like he's a guy that just like, so he's probably been the guy that's I'm looking at and always kind of saying, gotta get you at some point. Gotta get you at some point, but I gotta get back in the league before I can get him, because
that's true.
Yeah, anything else, you know what I mean? So, but he's always been tough. But if you're talking about then the environments, Tralee is the place to coach against. It's just an amazing place to do that. Phenomenal environment.
Yeah, they're doing. Look, they're doing incredible work down there. You know what I mean? And they've a very decent coach down there, well-dressed coach, if you're going to go down that road. But yeah, it was always a cauldron down there, always. Like, it was, you never got an easy game in Tralee, ever.
Yeah. Like, it was interesting because, like, people always say, like, what is your toughest battle? And actually, the one thing that I've always found difficult are small courts, because of the tempo that we want to play at. Like, so I would nearly even say, like, the court size is probably the biggest one. And we played above Mary my first year with Neptune, and it was just a nightmare for us. Like, we couldn't run to the corners as quick as we thought, falling out and hitting the walls, all that sort of stuff. So, like, the court size is probably my biggest barrier, really, because it just determines how we play. And if we had to slow down a lot, it just kind of hurts our style. But I think over the last couple of years, it's been a little bit easier with the style that we've had to play in more narrow, smaller courts.
Yeah, very true. So, players are notorious for superstitions and rituals. What about you as a coach? Is there anything that you still do every game day?
Yeah. I'm. My mother is notoriously suspicious, and I suppose for a bunch of years I was exercising more than I ever was. Where I used to run, if I didn't see a magpie, I was worried about the game. So I used to always run the morning of the game. And if I didn't see a magpie, I was kind of like, shit, today's not going to be a great day. And inevitably, if we never did, so I know that was self-imposed or whatever, but that was just a silly thing at the time that I just always kind of felt like that was just a dumbass thing. But so magpies were a bit of a superstition thing for me.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and then, if I wore a tie, where the back of the tie was kind of annoyed me. Like, if I felt the front of the tie was too heavy, or just silly things, like total like dumbass young coach type of stuff. But so I did have a few superstitions, but they were just little things that got me. But in terms of rituals, I'd be more of a ritual guy now rather than a superstition guy. If I don't exercise before a game, I don't feel great, and I do need to have a bit of a run beforehand, or a bit of time that I'm kind of not that I rather do stationary work or whatever it is. But I always feel I have to do something exercise wise just to feel like the adrenaline or whatever it is. A certain time I'm dressed for. I'm kind of I want to be at a certain point of the day at certain times. So I do prefer kind of a ritual rather than superstition thing now. Don't like eating anything heavy before a game. So, like, light food is something I do, but I don't want to go into a game hungry either. But I suppose a couple of referees would always say to me, Kelleher, have you got your Coke Zero today? So that was kind of my my thing. So if they didn't see the Coke Zero by the chair, then yeah, they felt they were in for a rough ride themselves. So yeah, it's very known out there about the Coke Zero, I think, at this point.
Brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant. So look, you've coached Neptune, Limerick, Glanmire, Demons, obviously with the Irish teams. But what's been your proudest moment as a coach? And is it game related or is it player related?
Ooh. I suppose, like, I mean, you enjoy games. Are they proud moments? They probably are. And we'll probably touch on those in a second. But I think probably the proudest moment only happened last year. Really, it was one of those things where, like, we were playing. I think it was Slovakia. Was it Slovakia or Luxembourg? I think it was Luxembourg. And the mic went. We no music, and we no national anthems.
I was there.
And next thing, the boys, like, and I have to say, like, I mean, Kiva or SNC and Leanne, the physio, and our team manager, they were just harping on for years with guys not knowing national anthems and stuff like that. So I remember looking over to Jack Yo, Dad said, let's just go with it. And the referees, I mean, Magic, and I said, let's just go with it. And next everybody was turning. And next thing, the boys just broke out into the national anthem. And it was like phenomenal. And I seen parents crying, and I'm like seeing all this sort of stuff going on. And I'm just taking, like, it was just an exceptional moment, like above in King's Hospital, that, like, we just never thought we'd get to. And it was, I suppose it defined what we were trying to do with these boys in terms of not just about the basketball, but like just being proud of everything that you do in terms of national team. It was just like an amazing thing. And we've had outside of that, then I suppose other things where you're hard on a guy and you think that it hasn't been the best relationship, and next all of a sudden the program finishes and they reach out and they say thanks, or maybe they've gone away and they realize that some of the things that we were doing was probably the betterment of that player, and they come back and say, look, yeah, I didn't really get that at the time, I'm sorry, and stuff like that. So they're the sort of things that, and then I suppose, the year that I coached Glanmire, that was a massive year. We didn't have the resource of everybody else. We 4 senior players, the bench is filled up with 16, 17, 18-year-olds. We'd 1 pro compared to everybody else having 2. So that was, in terms of, that was a really great year, and obviously not renowned for being a female coach, even though I've coached many female teams. But that was a special year with the group that we had, and we had some early adversity. I mean, we had the whole preseason. We beat Liffey controversially, and I would say that was controversially. We did escape one. The referees made an error for them, and we got away with it and got in the bus with a 1-point win in overtime, and told the girls everything we did in preseason, forget it. It just didn't work, and we turned it around, and by Christmas I thought we were a different team, So, and word in the street at that time is I was on the verge of being fired at Christmas, So so we turned it around, and we lost to Leicester at home just before Christmas. And we had a really honest conversation on the 27th of December above and upper Glanmire, and pretty much turned our season. We ended up beating DCU in the semi-final of the Cup, and we beat UL in the final of the Cup. Still, I think still the best female game that's been in the arena in the last decade, and people forget about that. Phenomenal game. We were up 13, we were down 13. UL had us on the ropes. Anya McKenna's broken foot, getting 18 points. Going to overtime, buzzer beaters, all that sort of stuff. And I thought it was just an exceptional spectacle. And I remember that particular final, there was a certain reporter that will remain nameless that told us that we were a helter-skelter offense, and we were not the type of team that should be winning a cup. And stuff like that. And now we're talking about teams being dynamic and having that ability. And so I look back in 2013, and I'm kind of saying, we did allow girls to shoot quick shots. We did allow to shoot the transition, and we did play a bit more dynamically than what women's teams were traditionally pinned for. And I actually have that in the bottom corner of my desktop, and it's there the whole time, and I watch it every now and again. It's one of those moments that you look back on. And obviously after coming off of a tough loss against the UL Eagles 2 years earlier with Demons, we just felt it was never going to happen. But it was just that was a special team. That was a great one. And then I suppose a couple of years ago, getting to the Euro Challengers, that was a really on the floor one. That was a nice one to do, just kind of through all the adversity of COVID and all the restrictions and guys sacrificing, 2 weeks beforehand to make sure they were negative on COVID tests. And, we bubbled ourselves in Limerick, and we really didn't come out of that bubble a little bit and stuff like that. The boys really gave everything to kind of make sure that they got to the Euros, and we didn't have to leave anybody behind, which was a phenomenal achievement. And when we got there, we had a rough time obviously in the first game, and then the last two games, we were nip and tuck and things like that. So that team was a special team. And we've had many special teams. I shouldn't be singling any team out, but I suppose just the fact that we got there through COVID. Well, I suppose from a personal perspective, the first W against Belarus, I still remember the 6 points that kind of got us over the line. We ran Tommy McDonald off a single after a stagger on the weak side, and he nails a 3 off a pass from in the Welsh. And then you look at Luke Thompson coming off the stagger, set initially by Roy Downey, and we go up 6, and you can hear in the background all the parents and stuff like that. We beat Belarus, and we make top 16 that year. And then we had a rough moment against Sweden and Belgium. I'll never forget. That was probably the 2 of the roughest games we've had. And as the first time head coach, it was tough. But then you had the performance of Roy Downey in that last game against Estonia on their home floor. And we beat them 88-84. And it was just one of those special moments. We see the boys and, what they achieved after coming off 2 absolute spankings against Sweden and Belgium at the time. So they're probably the ones that stick out an awful lot, but there's been some really, really great moments. I have to say, some, great moments over the years, but there was just so many.
And plenty more to come as well, I feel, especially, with the group that you have at the minute. I think next year could be another one. If we did this in 12 months' time, I'd say you'd be mentioning moments and that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, so I'm going to put you on the spot a bit. Putting together your Super League dream team. 5 players. Who are you taking?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I mean, I've been lucky to have been with some head coaches that have just been incredible, like Pat, Doug Leichner, Luke D'Alessio that year, albeit it was a tough year, but still some great players in that team. I mean, I'm going to annoy some people with this. This is going to be like, so I did split them into American. I think I'm going to split them into Americans and Irish players because I think it's, so I suppose this is going to annoy people too. I mean, I'm not going to leave some guys massively off this, but one of the best point guards I think that's come into the country. I mean, going to annoy Pat with this because we had a special point guard that year in Pat Pope, but Chris Craig in Tralee that year was just an exceptional point guard. He became player coach in Tralee. I thought Chris Craig was a phenomenal American point guard. And then just somebody that's close to my heart, we still yap every now and again, but he was a victory scholar, believe it or not. He was a walk-on at NC State. And he came to us in Limerick, and stats battle was just phenomenal. Phenomenal name, phenomenal guy, 6'4", was a walk-on at NC State, should have been a scholarship player at a lower Division 1 or whatever it was, but decided to stay at NC State in their home. And then a guy that people might not remember, he started out in Waterford and then Pat got him on with Demons, but James Sin, I think, was an exceptional guy. It's an exceptional guy. 6'6". I'm looking at the guys that Pat had at Demons, and I'm like, how can you leave some of these guys off? We had Bill Romano, we had we had some great guys. And actually Bill Romano was the athletic director at Quinnipiac with when Adele was there. So yeah. And then I suppose 2 guys that I still stay in regular contact with, and there's been better players possibly than them. Leaving Jermaine Turner off with the career that he has is probably the one that people are going to go with. I suppose they never coached Jermaine. I think he's a great guy, and we've had our fierce battles over the years, and he's been, I think when you talk about longevity of Irish Americans in the Irish League, and kicked our ass with St. Vincent's below in the year that we, when I was assistant to Pat, that we should have probably won the league that year, which was the first year of conferences, I believe. But Vincent's just absolutely spanked us that day in the Mardik Arena. I'll never forget it. But I'm going to go with my man Sean Atupam that we had That was the year that we lost to UL in the final. That was the only game that Sean scored less than 20 that year. He had 16. Yeah. So not that it was his fault. I mean, there was plenty of things in that game that contributed to it. And then just like a guy that just lets the rest of the guys do what they want, kind of our own Jermaine Turner, Marcus Van. So I always said, like, when Kieran and Shane Collin were with us that year, with first year with Dean, we said, lads, there's no bad shot with Marcus on the floor. He's going to get every offensive rebound, so shoot whatever you want. Yeah. And that was our offense pretty much that year. So, and even leaving off Tanner Brooks. I mean, Tanner Brooks won a couple of us that year with Neptune, albeit National League, but stats just gets in there because he's 6'4" and Tanner was 6 foot. So that's the only reason why that happens. But yeah, so they'd be kind of the 5 Americans. I'm just even thinking of it right now. I mean, there's some really great guys that have been left off that list, but I suppose just the affinity with those guys. I mean, yeah, so that'd be the 5 Americans. Rick don't give out to me, even though I never coached him, but he's going to give out to me anyway. Roscoe's probably going to give out to me. Yeah, so I just had to take that. I remember I was in college in Tralee, and Roger had given me one number when I landed in Tralee in 2000. That was Jimmy Diggins. So I called Jimmy and I just kind of started getting involved. And that was the year Russ Bradford was down in Tralee. Russ was a phenomenal coach too. A phenomenal coach. So we got down and Russ was coaching the college team and he said, let's just come down and practice whatever with us, we need body. So I went down and I was running around like a headless chicken because I wasn't that good. But next thing I went into Rick's space. Well, if I did, I was told very quickly about what not to do more than what to do. So I'll never forget it. So Rick gave me my first experience of being on the floor with Americans. And it wasn't a very positive one, but so I was, so that was it. But then if we go to the Irish guys, I'm going to annoy guys with this now. This is going to, Scott Kinnivan, I don't want to be hearing from you on this. I love coaching Scott and, I've always been very positive. I don't want to hear from Jordan Noonan either because he got knocked off by his buddy Jordan Blount. So if Jordan hadn't come back, then Jordan would be in this. Loved coaching Gary Walsh. Gary Walsh was phenomenal to coach, and Matt Hall was an incredible guy to coach as well. So just some really great guys that we've left off, and going with guys that I coach rather than coached against because, like Paddy Kelly's not on this. So that's a travesty. But yeah, so I'm going to go with guys I coached, and that might just make it a little bit easier. So I think CJ Fulton probably has to be on there. Coaching with Irish teams and Super League, and one of my favorite guys. That coached Shane Collin, purely because he can play the 1-2. He can play all 5 positions, and I suppose a funny story with Shane. When I coached teams at 29, we just come off winning the Billy Kelly with a very, very young group. Luke O'Mahony was the only 17-year-old, and we had a bunch of 15-year-olds. So Luke had went home, and pretty much I got the job because nobody else could do it. And I'd been at the club for a couple of years. So, and I was a very rigid. I mean, as I said, like Tom Izzo was my guy at the time. It was all sex, and it was all very deliberate and all that sort of stuff. And I thought Shane Collin was the guy that really, when I coached him, I was like, either I have to learn very quickly or I'm going to be gone very quickly because Shane ain't changing. So we used to always talk about like, what's the first scheme we're going to run off the jump ball and all that sort of stuff. And so I would always run stuff and try and run it for the American and all that sort of stuff. And inevitably, Shane would take the first shot every single time, right? Every single time. So, I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to change this? I said, I can't change it. He's going to take it regardless. So then I just started coming up with 2 or 3 schemes where I actually wanted Shane to shoot the ball from. And then I gave Shane the choice of what scheme we ran first. So he thought he thought he had control of it, when in reality, I was like, but Shane was the guy that probably forced me against my will. And I'm always going to be grateful for that, to make me a more dynamic coach. Because I realized at that point that the senior players are going to be who they're going to be. Mm-hmm. And we just have to let them play. You're not going to teach them a whole lot. You might talk about a couple of things or whatever it is. And that was the best learning thing that I ever got, going from juvenile basketball to senior basketball. So Shane at the 2. So Ger gets bumped off the 3 for Jordan Blount.
And Jordan at the 3. Interesting.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
And then Brian Clernan.
Yep.
Right. So Brian can obviously step out to 3. Jordan can duck in, pop back out, rotation thing. So we're going to do that sort of style of basketball. Well, I remember Brian Clernan having 32 in the INEC in the first quarter against Clarny below in Clarny when they were in the league. And I think Levitz was the American that year, but Brian just went off, man. Brian was just like incredible leader to be around, incredible player to be around. I never seen anybody since who know when to foul and how to foul when they fouled.
Yeah.
And not ever get fouled out.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
And he was just an outstanding player to be around, like just an incredible leader to be around. And the 5th guy, even though I didn't coach him, but I was on the staff with him, Colin O'Reilly.
Yeah.
And Colin, I remember it was the year that the league decided to go 2 legs for the quarterfinals coming off conferences, and with Marion. And we had Ryan Hamlet and, oh my God, Ryan Hamlet, who was the American again we had. But anyway, we had 2 Americans in the league that year, and Doug was coaching. And we went up to Marion in UCD, and we were 12 up late in the game, and we ended up tying the game back to the Mardyke. It was a draw, no overtime, straight back to the arena. So the arena game was essentially starting from 0. And I've never told Colin the story. I've never told anybody the story, I think. But we're in the middle of the game. Colin's having a bit of a dip, and he's struggling. And I step up to Doug. And like, Doug is a big dude now. I mean, 6'6", bit like a shipwreck house. You know, you just don't mess with Doug. So I said, you know, we're near half time. Get him up for a minute, get him back in, and let him reset himself. So I could see Doug thinking. And so next thing, Colin goes off like 12 in a row. All right, 12 in a row. And Doug was at the half a line, about turned and walked down and just under his breath says, "That's why you don't take your fucking best player off the floor." And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. So yeah, so it was like one of those moments of like, yeah, just keep offering, but you're not making decisions just yet. So that was yeah. And you know, you could have another Shane Collins story. I mean, like we're playing Vince's up in DCU, quarterfinals of the cup, I think the year that we got to the final. And we're 6 up with like 30 seconds to go, and we get the ball, and you're expecting like just Shane tuck on your jersey, run out 6 points, whatever it is. Shane starts going in transition. Glover backs off him to the free throw line. Shane pulls up in transition, takes the 3, misses. We end up winning by 4. So we're coming back on the bus, obviously in good form, and Shane is getting his balls busted by Niall O'Reilly on the back of the bus, who, by the way, is very unlucky because like I loved coaching Niall O'Reilly.
Great loved coaching. Hated playing against him.
And like not a lot of people did like playing against him.
Yeah.
But there was days where he was so good with some of our younger players. And then there was days where he just gave them lessons. And he always knew which day to do it. Right.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I played against Niall. But he was you know, he was just those guys you just let play. You just don't try and coach Niall. You put the system in place. He does what he does, and you just let that happen. And great things will happen when you do that. But we're coming down, and next Niall is like busting Shane's balls. And next thing he turns and he says, "What do you expect me to do?" He disrespected me. Like Pat Glover backing off the 3-point line and giving Shane the shot. He saw that as disrespect. So
absolutely.
I was
trigger.
Like, oh my. So like, but yeah, no, you just have some great moments. Like, and you just listen to, you just been around some great guys, and they when you get into their psyche and stuff like that, you just realize, you know, why they are the way they are, and all that sort of stuff. And Shane was just one of those guys. And you know, Jordan, he's off that obviously for Jordan, so he can have that argument with Jordan. But Jordan was like, Jordan just saw the game differently. Like his ability to post pass, his ability to do a special moment. Fuck it, we're going to play a 6-a-side and Jordan's in. Right?
Yeah,
we're going to play a 6-a-side. And when
First coaches episode, we'll give you that one. We'll give you the six.
So yeah, but look, it's I've just been very fortunate. And then you talk with some young players that came in to run the place, and I'm just very fortunate. I've been around some really talented players that have actually probably taught me more than anything else. But CJ was a different element of player really, and you can see how well he's doing. At the minute,
still doing fantastically well. Right, so we're going to change lanes a little bit. Top 5 musical acts of all time.
Right, I'm not known for my musical stuff, Ger. So I'm not necessarily going to go with musical acts.
Okay.
I'm going to go with genres. So I'm a big Motown guy.
Okay.
All right. I like Motown. I like listening to classical music. All right.
Why is that not a surprise to me?
All right. So like when I'm in my so that's something that, and I like American country. I'm into that. I'm a big Luke Combs fan at the moment. So, and then just like I'm more into songs rather than artists. So if any kind of song I like, so I'm more into kind of like dealing with songs as opposed to any specific artist really. My first ever cassette was Lionel Richie. I was a big Lionel Richie fan. So I'm 12 years old. My grandmother gave me Lionel Richie back to front.
He's a good concert. I've been to see him.
He's a good concert.
He's back next year, I think.
Yeah, I won't go to him now though. I won't go to him now. When he was still relevant. Yeah, in the RDS, I went to see him.
Yeah, I went to see him in the what is it now? The Tree Arena, a couple of years ago. Brilliant front row, amazing. He's amazing.
So he's a good guy. Yeah, so my dad used to have this blue cassette box in our living room, and I would just listen to all the Motown stuff and all the Diana Ross and Lionel Richie and just all the Motown stuff, and just like even Spotify or Apple Listen, I'll just go Motown and just listen to all that sort of stuff. It's depending on the mood I'm in. So
I'll give you that. It's a shock, but I'll give it to you anyway. So based on that, 3 warm-up songs.
Right, so this will go against the grain then. Right. So I kind of all the Irish things, like I'll just throw on some stuff that I like at the time or whatever it is, and they'll bust my rear end over some stuff that I throw on and just have a bit of gimmick and them to get to know me and my kind of quirky stuff as well. But right now, it's not really a kind of, you wouldn't consider it a song to warm up to, but I'm kind of into it right at the moment. Lizzo, Am I Ready?
Okay.
So have a listen to it and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Then an old one, Afrojack, The Spark. That gets it going. And then if I'm on a run, I always try and throw this on. The last kind of mile is a 300 Violins, a classical one that's just kind of like pumps, and so there you go. Yeah.
Three good songs. Look, they get added to the playlist. So
yeah,
we see what people think.
Yeah, they won't be thinking very much. I'm going to be. My phone's going to be. What the hell is Kelleher thinking? What the hell is Kelleher thinking?
So
yeah,
we're on the home stretch. What advice would you give to a 16-year-old Paul Kelleher?
Yeah, that's an easy one. I think. I suppose the one weakness you always have is probably the one thing you're always going to try and give to your 16-year-old self. So emotional control, definitely the one I've always kind of felt that, I'm a massively competitive person, massively competitive. And I think it's probably something I've never really been able to manage. And something I've probably really come to, that when I feel like our backs against the wall, I'm going to do some stuff. And yeah, so if I can ever master that, then maybe things would have been different, but it is what it is. And, you look back and you just try and help other people to be as best they possibly can. And I suppose that's something that I've always tried to say is like, if you can master your emotional control, you're probably going to see things better, do things better, and make better decisions. So yeah, so if I had one thing to take back and go back to 16, emotional control.
Yeah, I'll buy into that one. I'll definitely buy into that one. So, second last question. 5 dinner guests, dead or alive, friend, family, famous. Who is Paul Kelleher bringing to dinner?
Yeah. So I'm making it a sports table, a coach's table. So my man, I've definitely got to go with Jurgen Klopp. I just think, like, I'm a Liverpool fan. He's, you love him or you hate him. He's energetic. A lot of people don't like him. A lot of people love him. But just like how he manages, like the one thing that always comes back is like even the guys that don't play, how he has those relationships and how he has that ability to keep them engaged. Like, and you think of all the players that have left Liverpool, have had horrendous careers since they left. You just wonder, like, what was it? Like, you look at Coutinho, you look at whoever, like, I mean, Wijnaldum, like, what was the reason they were just so good for Liverpool? Average players, Divock Origi, like, he just always seemed to perform whenever he came off the bench. He might play for like 12 games or 13 games. Next, all of a sudden he comes up with Champions League goals or cup final goals or whatever it is. I'm just wondering what's the magic about it. And there obviously is something magic about Klopp. I'm putting this as a combo. All right, Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge. All right, so that's a combo. That's the same seed. All right, so I'm cheating a little bit, but that's the same seed. And just because of, like, again, you talk about the emotional control of Brad Stevens, and you're just like, sometimes you're looking at Brad and you're like, come on, Brad, let's get a bit of a fire. But like, he never had to. So what words is he using? What's he doing to kind of keep those guys? Now, they never got over the hump, and my dad's a Celtics fan. I'm still a Bulls fan, but I always had the argument that when Brad was there, they were never ever going to win an NBA title, not because of the coaching ability, not because of the playing ability of the team, but I always felt they were always missing one player of length. And if you look at the time where they all had their point guards at Kemba and prior to that, and Marcus, Isaiah Thomas, they were too small and they were getting passed over and they were just being easy to be passed around. And it wasn't until last year where they bumped Taylor and I'm blank on names today. What's
their point?
No, not the point guard. Duke there.
Jason Tatum.
No. Jason Tatum. Yeah. And they bumped them up a position from 3-4 to 2-3. And look at the run they made. So the length of players can affect defense. And offensively, they were never in trouble. They were always great. But defensively, I always felt that they were just one player of length away. And when you look at what happened last year in the finals, they had the team, but just Golden State just had the experience over it and whatever. So I do think length is about putting together a roster like that Danny Ainge has always been able to do.
Yeah.
When you got Celtics, and you look at when you had Doc Rivers, so that's a single seat. So how they manage that sort of organization. As a Liverpool fan, this hurts me deeply, deeply, deeply. But I'd have Alex Ferguson at this table, right? And the reason why is he always knew when to change. He always knew when to slip a player away and bring somebody in to replace him. And I think that's an incredible skill. So imagine that conversation at the moment, putting together rosters, and, all that sort of stuff. And then one of our very own, I'd love to have Jerry Fitzpatrick at that table. I mean, Jerry was our lecturer for masters at that time, and the course he put together was just incredible. But like, the one thing he always said, and I thought was a phenomenon. So when we asked him about, like, when he coached our senior men's, and the one thing he said, he was scared of his life of those players because they obviously played, but he could never let them know that they were better than him. He went on the floor saying they had to learn from him, and it was just something he had. So like how you manage the egos around those high level players, and he was managed. And then just for a bit of comedy, I'm going to bring Ted Lasso along. Yeah, just for a bit of comedy, just the quirky stuff, and he might say some quirky, and the lads will have all the technical jargon for it. But I'm going to sneak in Phil Jackson with that there as well, just because I think he's Jordan, Kobe, so the high level players and stuff like that, So, but what would be fascinating is to bring someone in from with that sort of group, like of a developmental guy, of how players got that level. So like having someone like from Ajax or whatever it was, like in all those academies that bring players through, what do they do to help the players get to that level that these guys can manage them? Yeah. That would be something fascinating on how that's done, especially in the current climate. And we're talking about like constraints of approach and small set of games, linear, non-linear, all that sort of stuff. What was their approach? Because Ajax just seemed to be constantly bringing through. Like even if you look at Southampton, even in the UK or whatever, there's like someone of that in with that table. That would be a phenomenal table to be around.
What are we having for dinner? And you're one of my favorite coaches and favorite people, because quite often you will send me a recipe which I love, and it's like, hey, what do you think it is?
Yeah.
So what are we having?
Yeah, I'm liable to throw anything together, to be perfectly honest. So I'm going to do the cooking myself. I'll throw maybe together my orzo turkey mince and pesto creme fraiche dish with mushroom, spinach and sweet corn or something like that, or I might do my spaghetti vol au vent dish or something like that. So yeah, just something just to throw together and just have a bit of crack, rather than making anything specific out of it.
Love it. Brilliant. Look, Paul, this has been a pleasure. It's been a long time coming. We're at the end. Last question. Who would you like to see on the podcast? But the only thing is you have to help get them on.
Oh, I mean, he dodges my calls the whole time, and this is an easy one. It's got to be O'Malley. I've been saying this for a long time. Brian O'Malley's got to get out of the shadows and deliver the stuff that he knows, because I think he's a great guy.
I would love to show you the message I got back from him when I reached out to him.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Couple of F-bombs in there. Don't have time.
No, it was more. Oh, come on. Sure, who would want to hear from me? There has to be more important. When you get through what did he say? When you get through the top end, lads, give us a shout.
Yeah. So O'Malley's got to get on this and finally open his mouth and give us some
absolutely.
Some
look, he's been consistently good for so many years. He has to, whatever his secret is, it's about time he crawled out from under his cholesterol rock.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because I think the Irish Super League is a tough league to stay in a league for a long time. And the one thing Brian has done is banish all the myths of you can only be in a team for 3 years and all this sort of stuff, and how he does it and stuff like that. I mean, as I said, we've always had some great battles, and it's just something that I think he's managed to do exceptionally well over time. And it's just been nice to see how he does it. I mean, we've always had the odd message here and there at camps and things like that. So like, Brian's a great guy.
Well, look, I'll reach out again. You can't keep turning me down. There's only been one player or one person who keeps turning me down consistently, and that's Sharon Kelly, and I'm still chasing her, and I will get her on eventually.
Very good.
Paul, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Best of luck in the coming season with your under 15 boys, and obviously with the Irish team then when everything gets back together. What's your first competition? Is it Four Nations this year?
Yeah, it'll be Four Nations, Cardiff, on April 12th and 13th. Just the week after the Billy Kelly and Easter Sunday.
Excellent. Look, until next time, Paul, we will talk soon. Take it easy. Cheers, buddy.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
The first episode back with Paul Kelleher. Special thanks to Paul. He's become my sounding board when I'm losing my reason as a coach with one of their 17 girls. Always a great guy to reach out to. And look, I wish him and the under 18s all the best. It was so great. I got to see them in their 3-game series with Luxembourg during the summer and watch that team grow. And I think he's returning 7 players this year, which is absolutely incredible to that panel. Great times for Irish basketball. This weekend, we have on Sunday, the James Weldon and the senior women are back in the basketball arena, and it's a sellout. How amazing is that? Absolutely fantastic. But we can catch the game on TG Carher on Sunday, just in case you haven't been lucky enough to get tickets to the basketball arena. Look, and until next week, those famous words, I'm Jago, and I'll see you on the court soon.